one can see me though, right? So let's do this where we can get. Where's my video? There I am. Cannot start video. Camera, please. Why can't it start the video?
Alan, is the sound on?
Okay, 1 second, guys. Just give me a second. I know what to do. Okay, I'm going to go out of this. Okay. Yeah. We're good. No, I don't want to update that right this second. I'm going to just get in to the room. Just 1 second. Bear with me. Okay, here we go. Okay, you guys can see me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we do.
Okay, great. Just 1 second. I'm just trying to. I'll have to. All right. Okay. Wow. It's gonna echo. Okay. Oh, here we go. All right. Hello? I'm not echoing? Am I echoing? I don't hear anybody. Oh.
Just a tiny bit, but it's fine.
No, it's not good. I tried to mute it. Okay, just 1 second. Let me see what I could do. Oh, I see why, for sure.
It's showing that you're logged in twice, maybe.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to get out of one of them. Okay, how's that? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? No one can hear me?
No, we can't hear you. You're muted.
Muted. Oh. How's that? Can you hear me now?
Yep.
All righty. Are we still echoing? All right. We are ready now. Okay. You know, technical stuff in me. Always a shtickle challenge. Okay. Welcome to California, everybody. It is 9:04 a.m. Okay. And we're going to continue the story of the Master of Prayer. This is the most amazing story that you have to think about it. I'm sure some of you have been contemplating this. I'm sure it's in the back of y'all's minds. It's like, wow, what's going on here? I see the Master of Prayer is this unbelievable hero. He's the guy, he's always involved in praying and praises to God, and he believes that that's the goal. And he leads people to his place outside of civilization. And he says, this is where you just got to connect and you just got to work on connecting. And he's a cult leader. You know, some people say that Judaism is a cult, right? Not really, but whatever. There's no real definition for cult when you break it down, but we won't get into that now. It is, but you know, whatever it is, it's just, you know, we won't get into the idea here is the Master of Prayer, and maybe you contemplate it. Would you consider yourself to be a student of the Master of Prayer? Do you agree to him, with him, if he was to be standing facing you right now, that the goal of life is praying and talking and connecting to God in one way or another? Look at my tie, it's just messed up here. Okay. Reality. All right. So the goal of life, can you connect to that for a minute? Can you see that it's definitely reasonable? Can you see that every single thing that we've been learning is all about this idea of what is the goal here? What are we supposed to be doing here? Assuming, and it's that we are a creation. God created us. God created us for a purpose. What is that purpose? So the purpose, of course, as we all know from everything that we've been discussing, is God made a creation in order to bestow pleasure to another. And that greatest pleasure that God wants to give his creation is none other than himself. And we start off in a certain situation where we have to, in order to have that full relationship, in order to have that receiving in the right way, we have to have some kind of sense that we earned it or that we're somehow participating in it. And that participation, really, of this tremendous abundant flow that God wants to pour into us, is to recognize him. And it falls back really to the Garden of Eden, where God does not let rain come until man is around, and he creates man, and man realizes, holy cow, there's no rain here, man. And so he prays for rain, and then the rain comes. So God is not going to give a bestowal unless there's going to be a vessel, Adam, to receive and to appreciate it. Thank you, Hashem, for the rain. No, I don't think Adam spoke like that. Okay. Okay. So in any case, the idea here is God made a creation in order to bestow pleasure to another. So, of course, it made sense that the goal of creation, according to the Master of Prayer, is we're here to connect. We're here to see beyond the mask of matter and whatever's going on, to try to know that God is like right there. He's just hidden, but he's right there, and we have to use our minds to see beyond the hiddenness of God. And we only want God to be revealed more. And we understand that everything, God is the source of all pleasures. Whatever pleasure you can come up with, he's the source of all pleasures. And so in doing that is the ultimate connection. So does it make sense a little bit from what the Master of Prayer says? I ask you, okay? Does it make sense? That the goal of life, of course, is to connect. Now, of course, to make that free will just a little bit harder, right? Just to make emphasis, okay, of course, through his storyline, he's going to come up with, right now, in the hurricane. I think what we've been discussing so far is our hero is the Master of Prayer. And it seems to be that the bad guy, right? The antagonist is going to be the land that had a lust for wealth. That means everybody's pursuing money. And it's kind of like, you have to understand that we see that in the world, that there's a tremendous pursuit, that the man with the most money, is king. Those are the guys, and then they set them up as, and in Rabbi Nachman's story, they set them up as gods, and then they sacrifice to the gods to be incorporated in them, and in order to learn, in order to only amass more money, and this is their belief. And so the Master of Prayer tries to convince those people, and he's not successful. Eventually, what happens is he got captured. And then there's the third character in our story, which is the mighty warrior. This is the whole catalyst, which kind of shakes up the land who had a lust for wealth. Because why? Here's the Master of Warrior who's not interested in wealth at all. He just wants subjugation. He just wants you to accept that he's the king. And of course, he has no interest in money at all. And the people who had a lust for wealth, they're freaked out. Why? Because the Master of Prayer has come to their border outside their cities and sends messengers and says, you have 3 days to decide to subjugate or die. Okay? So these guys are freaked out, and they have this kind of idea in mind. If we go to the place where all the people are gods over there, they have so much more money than we do, surely they will be able to help us. And of course, the Master of Prayer, he goes in the cities trying to convince people. He gets caught. They finally find him. They finally catch him. And they're interviewing him, the ministers of the state, going, this mighty warrior you talk about is the mighty warrior. And he says, well, he starts to explain, and this is where we get into our scenario. He starts to explain that he was once with a king, and the king, of course, had a queen. The queen had a daughter, and the king also had 7 advisors. And these 7 advisors, each one had a special skill, like the wise man, the treasurer. You're going to meet the treasurer, and the mighty warrior, the master of prayer, the bard. You're introduced to some of the characters. The bard is like this unbelievable orator, songs like unbelievable. And the king, because he had this hand, if you remember the hand, with you could punch it, it's like almost like what we have in a map. Where is that 7-Eleven, right? And you can yes, 7-Eleven. There are 5 7-Elevens in your area. Which one do you want to go to, right? So in any case, the king had a hand, and on that hand, he was able to tell these 7 advisors where they can go up to a place, and they get a special power, a higher level of power according to their kisharon. Their kisharon is their talent. So the wise man, he had a path where he can get incredible wisdom. And the Gibor, the mighty warrior, he showed a path to the sword, where he was already an unbelievable warrior, but then he can get extraordinary powers. The master of prayer, the bard, he showed everyone there where their connection point is in the cosmic realm, where they can go and they get tremendous powers. It seems like they have to renew their powers. And the master of prayer told the story that he was with the king, and he suggested a daughter for the princess. And the daughter, of course, who did he suggest? He suggested the mighty warrior should marry the queen's daughter. Great. Wedding, great. And then what happens is they had a baby, and the baby is this beautiful child. And then what happens is the hurricane hits. The hurricane hits, and it brings out basically because the baby gets sucked out in the hurricane. Oh, my baby, right? And so Isabel goes, and the daughter of the queen, and then of course the king and queen goes, and they're gone into the whirlwind of the hurricane. And the 7 advisors were all meditating in their various places, wherever they were, going up in their out-of-body experience. Meanwhile, the hurricane hits, turns dry land into sea, sea into dry land, water, everything just gets mixed up and turns up a huge hurricane that just the entire world puts in chaos. And then, of course, when the mighty warrior came back from renewing his powers, of course, he saw that the entire world was not the same anymore. Devastation. This was supposed to be a city here, but now it's a barren wasteland. There's supposed to be a barren wasteland here, and here there's a city. He's like going, this does not configure with every single thing. Okay, he realized about the great hurricane, and basically all of the king's men were scattered all over. So this is likened to, as we described, as the shattering of the vessels. The shattering of the vessels, we said, was really only the lower 7 of the Sfirot, not the first 3. The first 3, however, there was what we call a bittul, a nullification. There was a certain blemish. There was a certain area in the top 3 Sfirot, Keter, Chachma, and Bina, which they weren't able to go ahead and they didn't break, but there was a deficiency in it. And so that represents actually the king, who's Keter. They said the queen, and this is just a construct for now, okay? The queen is Chachma, and the queen's daughter is Bina. We're just going to do that construct because they're the ones who go out into the hurricane. And then, of course, the 7 ones are the lower Sfirot. And I was reading this, and it was kind of interesting to me, and I thought about it. And I just going to lay this out as a question. I haven't figured this out. I haven't figured anything out, okay? We're all in a journey together. But the idea here of these 7 lower sphirot. Let's just look at it. Or let's, in our story, the 7 advisors to the king, including the master of prayer, would go up to renew their powers, and then there was a shattering. Now, usually we heard in terms of the shattering of the vessels was the light came in, the king ruled, and then shattered, and then the shards broke and fell to the other worlds of creation, formation, and making, Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya. But here it's kind of an interesting thing if we're going to go ahead and compare the 7 advisors to the king to the shattering of these, because it seems like these 7 advisors went up before the hurricane hit. They were gone. It's kind of a strange thing. I don't necessarily have an answer because I've read in the Kabbalah, and it's no place where it mentions that the light leaves. Usually the light was the cause to the shattering. Too much light was a cause of the shattering. That's every single thing that I've learned up until now. And the idea was that here, obviously, what's going on in our story is they go up, and then there's a shattering. Follow the question? Everything we learned in Kabbalah was the light comes in, and then it shatters. But here, it seems like the light leaves, and then there's a shattering. And the only idea, again, if you could come up with any idea, I'm happy, okay? So the only idea that I could come up with is that before Adam sinned, let's just look at Adam in the Garden of Eden. Before he sinned and he ate from that tree of knowledge of good and evil, parts of his neshama, his higher parts, his neshama, his chaya, and his yechida, the upper parts of his neshama they left. They're going, oh man, he gonna do it. No, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't go up the stairs when the axe murderer is chasing you. It's like, here's Adam reaching for it, and the higher levels of soul are going, oh my gosh, no way. He's gonna stink up the whole world. We are out of there. We can't handle the smell of the soul when it sins. And that happens to actually each of us. They say a person does not sin unless he's full of a ruach shtus. Ruach shtus means a spirit of folly. What is a spirit of folly? A level of stupidity, meaning his brains leave him. Before a person sins, there's elements of his soul in individuals that the soul does not want to get tainted by the sin, so the soul leaves him. So in putting that with our story, maybe that's a construct that we could use, how these 7 lights, these 7 expressions, the advisors of the king, who really represent these 7 very unique expressions in the world, in the highest possible form of expression, left before the shattering. And we're going to see more about that now, okay? As I think we are on, I'm going to go back just a little bit, because sorry, I was just looking at this last night. Oh, this is just delightful. You're going to now figure this out now. Everybody's got to contemplate, are you with the camp of the master of prayer? Okay, here we go. I'm just going to go back a little bit. Okay, so the master of prayer, of course, was captured in the land of had the lust for wealth. Of course, he had an impression of the map that he was able to get out. Okay, so the mighty warrior was coming closer and closer. I'm on page 311, if you have it. 311. Okay. So they wanted to keep the master of prayer. Of course, the master of prayer knows how to dematerialize or go somewhere, or he goes through walls. He's got the hand. If you got the hand, you can go through walls. Okay. All of this is just a game if you're really coming from that place. In any case, for whatever reason, even though they put him in a jail cell, the master of prayer, he's like, okay, I'm just going to go. He can go wherever he wants. Okay. You can't contain him. Okay. However he does it, he does it. And we wish we had that hand. We do have the hand. We're getting there. Okay. We're figuring it out. Okay. So they kept the master of prayer with them and did not allow him to leave. They realized that the mighty warrior advancing on them just might be the mighty warrior, but they have to do more investigation. Meanwhile, on page 311, the mighty warrior was coming closer and closer, constantly sending messengers, I'm coming. Finally, he arrived and camped right outside the city. When he sent emissaries, the people were terrified. They asked the master of prayer for some advice. He told them to investigate the ways and customs of this warrior so as to determine whether or not he was the mighty warrior. The master of prayer left and went out to the mighty warrior. He went to the camp. When he came to the mighty warrior's camp, so he began to speak to one of the warrior's guards. Of course, it's a camp and there's guards. Not even just walk in, right? To determine if he was the king's warrior. We're going to check it out. The master of prayer asked him, what is your occupation? What is your occupation? Right? How did you join up with this warrior? So the soldier replied to the master of prayer, telling him this story. You love the story with the story. I know you do. It all happened in this manner. Page 312. In our chronicles, it is written that there was a great hurricane in the world. This hurricane turned the whole world upside down. Sea was transformed into dry land, and dry land into sea. Desolate areas became inhabited, while inhabited areas became desolate. It threw the whole world into confusion. After this period of panic and confusion, where all the world was disoriented, the people of the world decided to elect a king. Then they delved into the question as who would be most fit to be elected king? Because you understand, everybody's waking up from this and everybody doesn't know where to go and everybody is disoriented as the world of chaos, as this world of confusion, which we are currently in. So people got together, right? They all gathered by Mother Abigail. Maybe y'all remember who Mother Abigail is. I'm 106 years old and I still bake my own bread. Right? Y'all come see me, East Texas, and bring all your friends. Upon deliberation, they finally said, the most important consideration is the goal of life. Okay, at least everybody's on a certain track. The goal of life. What is the goal of life? Do we ever ask that question? How often do you ask that question? Really, it should be every time you wake up in the morning. I am a creation. There is a creator. There's a goal. Wow, imagine contemplating that every morning. In any case, going back to the story, the most important consideration is the goal of life. Therefore, the person who strives the most towards this goal is fit to be king. Get that, right? Who's going to be king? We goal X. Whoever strives the most towards goal X, that's going to be the king, right? But then they had to determine what is the goal of life. Regarding this question, obviously that's where groups started to form because people disagreed. Okay, so he said one faction said that the main goal is honor. In the world, the main consideration is dignity, honor. If a person is not given proper honor, or if some people say that impinges on his honor, he can even commit murder. He is mortally offended, challenges into a duel, slapping the glove on the wrist because of honor, right? He can even commit murder. He is mortally offended because of honor is most important among people, you know. Even after death, the main consideration is honor. People are careful to honor the dead, burying him with honor. They even say to him, whatever is being done for your sake, for your honor. The dead have nothing more to do with wealth or pleasure, but still, people are very careful to honor the dead. Therefore, they said, honor is the main goal of life. And they had other confused, foolish, logical reasons. I know a country where it seems like, at least according to my very limited experience and knowledge, but there's a company. I have to say it. I don't know if it's still done, but this Harry Carey business and or all these movies about you have offended me, my family, and the Shuri Temple, right? And I am defending my honor to the death, right? So some of these Japanese places will commit harikiri, right? Because of honor. Everything is about honor, right? A little bit too extreme, okay? Now, they were thus led to agree. Well, okay, let me go back here a little bit. All right, the same was true of all the other groups, which shall be discussed presently. They also had logical arguments for their confused, foolish opinions. Some of them are discussed, but the Rebbe of blessed memory didn't want to present all the confused logic for these opinions. Some of the logic is so twisted that would be possible, actually, for people to take it seriously and then fall into that error, so that Rabbi Nachman does not want to go ahead and list them, because, of course, all of these people are very foolish and falling into the wrong area. They were thus led to agree that the main goal is honor. They therefore felt that they would have to seek an honored man who also pursued honor the most. Such an honored man would be the one who pursued honor and also gained honor. If he was an honored man who already had honor, then when he pursued honor and desired it, his nature would help him to attain this honor. Since the goal is honor, such a man would be striving for the goal and also attaining it. All right, in their foolish and confused opinion, such a man will be most fitting as king. So they went out to find such a man. They finally discovered an old gypsy beggar who was being carried and followed by some 500 gypsies. Woo! The beggar was blind, crippled, and mute, and the people following him were all members of his clan. They were his brothers and his sisters, as well as the children that he had sired. These were the people who followed him and carried him. This beggar, is a gypsy beggar, was very particular about his honor. He had a nasty temper and was always angry at them and scolding them. No, don't carry me like that. What's wrong with you? I don't know if he spoke like that. But in any case, right? He constantly ordered different people to carry him, and then he was angry at, no, not like that, you dweeb. You sick, hapless dweeb. And he would insult them, but they were all scared of him, and he was pursuing honor. Obviously, this old beggar was a highly honored person. He also pursued honor since he was so particular about it. This faction therefore felt it would be best to accept him as their king. The land itself, and this is a unique idea I've spoken about before, land itself also had influence. Some lands had an influence that was particularly conducive to honor. Some people, while other lands were conducive to other traits. Therefore, the group which had determined that the main goal was honor sought a land in Japan where honor is sacred. Conducive to honor. They found a land which particularly good in this respect and settled there. Okay, now we got to get, they have to get just a little bit into this, because here we're seeing the beginning of the broken parts of those shattered vessels and how they become contorted and perverted and taken into a contorted, perverted form. Okay, because it's obviously honor in its highest place. It relates to a very holy place here, the king. Honor is the king. The king is the most honorable. So in the holiest place, of course, it represents the king. Okay, but of course, even that part did have some kind of falling. It's interesting how the way he's describing it here, but we're not going to take every single aspect of the story completely literally, because we say that Keter really doesn't fall all the way to Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiya. However, there was a little, so to speak, a discombobulation. So here he says in the note, right, that I'm on a note on 313. Kavod in Hebrew, this is the first group. The king became their leader. Thus, we find some people devoting their lives to the pursuit of honor. This is why people want wealth. Huh? Why? Because when you have wealth, you can get honor, right? If I only had my plaque on that wall, maybe they honored me. If I had money to donate to this synagogue, then maybe I would get some kavod. People even become rabbis and teachers in order to attain honor. Chas v'shalom, God forbid. Okay, but it happens. Okay, people want to be a rabbi because they see rabbis who get like this kavod, and they're followed around by an entourage, and people are listening to every word, and it's like that's people would like that, right? This concept fell. So this is going on in the footnote here. This concept fell from the holy concept of honor, where we must honor God and his Torah. That's the highest. That's in its raw, highest level of expression, giving. Now, the idea of what is honor in Hebrew is kavod. Kavod, it comes from the same root as kaved, which is liver, and that's also heavy. The liver is heavy. It's probably the heaviest because it's full of blood. So kavod means give weight. My Rebbe once said that, and it put everything in a completely different perspective, because when you think about it, if you want to give glory to God or kavod to God, you give it weight. When something has weight in the conceptual frame, that means it takes space in your consciousness. Because when Hashem says, you got to put on tefillin, you got to pray, you got to do this mitzvah, you got to do that mitzvah, it has weight. If it has weight, you're giving God the honor, keep Shabbos, whatever the mitzvahs is, you give it weight. That's what it means by kavod. So the ultimate holy expression of kavod, of honor, is to honor God and the Torah. Because God said, I will honor those who honor me. So in other words, when you're in that flow and you're connecting in the holiest, so you're connecting to the higher expression of what real kavod is. Here he says some interesting things. Honor is therefore like the king's scepter, and no commoner may use it. Okay, here Rabbi Kaplan says, this was the worst of all the groups. This is an interesting idea. I didn't go through every single one of these notes, even though I've read the story several times. This was the worst of all the groups. I wasn't thinking that. I thought the worst of all the groups was the land who had a lust for wealth. He does say it, and he says it several times. It is the hardest, the land who had a lust for wealth. It is the hardest to get out of. And we're all caught up in it. You must admit, everybody needs money. Money makes the world go round. We all know that. There's this concept of we're all caught in it. And the question is, what is your relationship to it? How Rabbi Nachman is helping us to form our relationship to it. That if we ever get caught up, God forbid, in a lust for it, we can understand, okay, it's part of inside of me, the land who had a lust for wealth. It's that influence, it's there. And to break free from it and to try to see beyond that and live beyond that. Because, of course, everybody will tell you. So many people, and I've had firsthand, where pursuing wealth doesn't bring happiness, doesn't bring joy, doesn't bring fulfillment. It doesn't. And they all tell you that. My dad used to my dad started Petite Sophisticates, which was a clothing store for petite women. They didn't have it in those days. Fancy clothes for small women. He was providing actresses in Hollywood. Karen Valentine, I remember room 222 in 20th Century Fox. This is way, way, way back. In any case, Denise Nicholas, room 222, that was it. In any case, he had 24 clothing stores. We had a boat. We were living in a place, a very nice, place in Los Angeles. But at a certain point, he says, it just doesn't make me happy. And I remember asking him that. And he says, I had it all, but it didn't make me happy. So he gave it, he let it all go to, and he wanted to pursue happiness. What a concept. So in any case, that concept of the land who had a lust for wealth is in all of us. But here's also a thing that's in all of us, the pursuit of honor, dignity, kavod, recognition. And he says here, Rabbi Nachman says, this was the worst of all the groups, since it could only be rectified by the king himself, which is just amazing. Therefore, at the end of the story, we'll see that the king, the king, Keter, the energy of Keter, becomes the king over this group. So he's the one who rectifies the group. Here he says something interesting, which, hey, you can pull it in. Like I say, Rabbi Kaplan's commentary, he'll bring here, 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 and here, and basically figure it out, or you got to decide one. I don't know if he's deliberately confusing because he brings so many opinions to explain it, but you can, I'm sure we can put it all into one, and I'm happy to hear your comments. So he says here, this group represents the first commandment. The first commandment is, I am Hashem, your God. Interesting now. We're getting another idea, another concept now. That here we have the 10 commandments. We've always had the 10 sefirot, 10 commandments, the 10 plagues. They go along with also the 10 statements of creation. I think I've tried to do that kind of class once, where I kind of like string it all, how the tens, the sets of tens that we have are all basically one unified energy and different expressions. So the expression of this commandment, which is, I am Hashem, your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, the first commandment, it fell. It fell to a certain degree, and honor, of course, is misplaced. And then people think that they can get honored. People think honor is due to me, or the main thing is honor, and we need a guy who's mostly involved in honor, and let's choose him as our king. That's basically it. Okay, so the Midrash comments going on in the note here. The Midrash also mentions that when the Israelites were in the desert, they had 10 things. This is something else here. Here we go. Just to throw something else at you to get you confused. The manna, the quail, the well, the Torah, the tabernacle, the divine presence, priests, that's me, I'm a Kohen. Levites, a king, clouds of glory, bam, 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 bam. These represent the 10 men of the king and the 10 groups here. I don't know about 10 men of the king. I thought the king was one of them. Of these, the divine presence, Shekinah, represents the land of honor. There you go. Okay, so now you got a whole scenario here. It's interesting now. All of a sudden, we're taken to the desert where the Jewish people are there, and then getting these 10 things together. Okay, now let's go back into the main text. Okay, and we are on page 315. Another faction. That's faction number 1. He's going to go fast through them, but you're going to get an idea of how the shattering of the vessels, this is where I wanted to get to, and it took 3 classes to get to this, how the shattering of the vessels has an expression that we see now in our daily experience, within ourselves and externally in the outer world. Another faction decided that honor was the main goal. Well, we did that. Wait a minute. No, another faction decided that honor was not the main goal. Instead, they concluded that the main goal was murder. The main goal was murder. Okay. I don't know if this is being recorded. Okay. Yeah. The main goal was murder. What? What are you talking about? This is our business. You know, I was thinking, there was a Jewish guy, a mobster, if you remember his name, gosh, I didn't write it down, who was the head of Murder Incorporated in America. I think he was shot at the airport, and now Meyer Lansky, that's his name, Meyer Lansky. If you needed anybody killed, you go to him and he would arrange it for you, right? Unbelievable. But these people, I don't know if that's those people, but let's just get into the concept here. They concluded that the main goal was murder, or let's say death. You know, people who worship death, you know, the Egyptians were amazing. Their main thing was death. They were so into death. So it could be that murder was like Egypt, or you have now factions. It is obvious that all things come to an end and decay. Everything in the world, whether herbs, plants, people, deteriorates and decays. Therefore, The final goal of everything is decay and destruction. What a nice attitude. Gosh, you guys are so attractive. It's so attractive. Decay and destruction. Decay and destruction. Everything is, those people who all dress in black all the time and they got this gothic makeup on and earrings everywhere and they don't smile. Hence, a murderer who kills people and destroys lives, because why? He's got to take away lives, right? Because everything's going in that direction anyways. Might as well make that the goal because we see that's where everything's going. Hence, a murderer who kills people and destroys lives is doing very much to bring the world to its goal. This group, therefore, concluded that the goal of life is murder. The man who would be the most qualified to be king would be a murderer who was easily provoked and fiercely jealous. According to their warped opinion, such a person would be qualified to be king. Okay. So here it says in the footnote here, murder. This was the second group. Eventually, the queen became their leader. We'll see that later. Rabbi Nachman once said that he found in a book that people exist who consider murder a virtue. This is the other side of the concept that there is anger and vengeance that is holy. There is such a thing, like Pinchas. It is thus written, God is jealous and vengeful. It is also considered an act of virtue for the court to administer the death penalty. So that's in its highest heightened state. This is a rectification of all worlds. Insofar as the four modes of execution rectified the four letters of the Tetragrammaton, this group, however, had transformed this concept, really they perverted it, into actual murder. Not there's a place where murder is, where you have to do it. The greatest holy expression of that I mentioned was Pinchas. Pinchas was a reincarnation of Cain. Cain killed Abel. It was not a warranted death, interestingly enough, that he killed Abel because Abel was born with two twin sisters. He felt that the extra twin should be his because he was older and born first. So therefore, since I was born first, I should get. Abel says, but she was born with me, and our wives are always born with us. If I was born with two, hey, that's my portion. They fought over him. Cain kills Abel. Then now comes Cain reincarnated into various forms. So one of the forms was Pinchas. Pinchas actually came and he killed Cosby and Zimri. That element of Pinchas, where death was not, murder was not okay. But there is one element of a place, one very small pinhole where this murder has to be. There's an elevated place of murder. And that's what Pinchas did when he killed Zimri. When he killed Zimri, of course, he rectified Cain because he took this act in the only place where it could possibly exist, which was Zimri, because he was brought this plague because of what he was doing. He messed up the people. He messed up the relationship. He threw a huge barrier between a Kodesh Baruch Hu and the Jewish people. And that had to be no barriers here. So he went ahead and took care of it. Okay, so therefore, but here he rectifies it. Okay, gets into other things about the four letter. This group ultimately took the queen as its ruler because she was sitting in a sea of blood, as we're going to see. Okay, I'm not going to get into more of this. Let's just go back. Okay, here we find this concept among people. Some are literally murderers, fighting, hating, and taking away the livelihood. By the way, shaming somebody in public is called murder. Yeah, that's right. Putting someone down in front of other people is called murder. Yes, it is. And the people love to do that. And then there's other forms of fighting, hating, saying lashon hara, being bad about somebody, taking somebody down is a form of murder because you murder that person's character in the eyes of others. So there is this other form, just to know that the perverted forms of murder doesn't have to necessarily take the place of actual murder, like what we do in Chicago, right? Also, death is a rectification of all sins. That gets interesting. Okay, this group parallels the sixth commandment, do not kill. Okay, we can understand that. Okay, and see how he brings the parallels. Anyways, let's go back. Okay, so since this, hence, a murderer who kills people and destroys lives, I'm on page 315, is doing very much to the world its goal, right? This group therefore concluded that the goal of life is murder. The man who would be most qualified to be king would be a murderer, would be a murderer who is easily provoked, fiercely jealous, right? Going on the next page, while seeking such a person, they heard a great outcry. What is this loud outcry, they asked. They were told the reason for this outcry is that a man just slit the throats of his father and mother. Sounds familiar? Is this like Oedipus? Wasn't that there something Greek dude, somebody in Greek who killed their mother and father? Could there be a murderer with a harder heart or a fiercer temper than this? They exclaimed. Here is a man who killed his own father and mother. According to their opinion, this man attained the goal of life, and it was good in their eyes. They accepted him to be their king. They then chose a land that was conducive to murder. It was a hilly, mountainous land where murderers lived. They settled there. What was it? Mountainous land. You know, some people don't go into the Appalachian Mountains because you can't come out alive. You go into the Appalachian Mountains there, the deliverance, you know, ding, 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 right? You don't know that, you know. Don't know what can happen in there. So some people don't go into the Appalachian Mountains. Probably the other places too. I'm not saying that's their place, but whatever. Another faction maintained that the person best qualified to be king was one who had a great abundance of food, but who did not eat the food of ordinary people. I'm a vegetarian, health conscious green, but highly refined food. Here he says, such as milk, well, unpasteurized milk, which does not make the mind too physical. Actually, it really makes one drunk, some people say. Such a person would be qualified to be king. In other words, he knows how to make the filet mignon, and he knows how to make it perfectly with all of the, you know, side dishes and everything. You know, he can make it Champs-Élysées, he can make it right? But no, he doesn't eat his own food. He eats a half-cut carrot in the morning and a half-cut carrot in the evening with olive oil. It's the Baba Sali diet, strict. Okay? So they could not, however, immediately find a person. Wait a minute. Yeah. They could not, however, immediately find a person who was nourished in such a manner. How are we going to find somebody who doesn't, you know, who's into the food? He's a major foodie. Food Channel, the beginning of the Food Channel. Here it is, right? Yeah, who started the Food Channel? He is fit to be king. And so they could not, however, immediately find a person who was nourished in such a manner, because he can't eat the foods, like all those guys who go down to the restaurant, and he's eating the double burger with the cheese and the shrimp and all this. And it's like, that's gross, man. Like, yeah, he goes to this weird restaurant. I remember seeing some of these foodie shows, right? Interesting. They therefore chose as a temporary king a wealthy man who had a great abundance of food. He would rule until they could find the kind of person whom they desired, who did not eat like other men. Meanwhile, until they found a person with the full qualifications, this wealthy man would be king, after which he would resign when they found someone better. Okay, they accepted this man as king and chose a land that was conducive towards their goal, settling there. Of course, they went to France. We are the master chefs in France, so, right? Il faut prendre le taureau par les cornes. The only thing I remember from French class. In any case, food. But, you know, it's not, it could be, let's say, like, you know, how they're localizing a certain land. You have to understand, and it's a really dynamic thing, that certain lands grow certain mentalities. Don't you see it? It's quite easy, right? You go to Californians. How many Californians does it take to change a light bulb? 10. 1 to actually change the light bulb, and 9 to share the experience, right? And then, of course, how many New Yorkers does it take to change the light bulb? Mind your own business. Okay? Now, going on in the story, you get what my drift is. It doesn't have to be localized, but of course, the people there, very interesting. All right. Another faction, we're going on to the different factions. And of course, once again, just to reiterate that these factions are all the shattered vessels, but in perverted form. And we see how in the world, how most people, even though that they'll agree to you in theory, yeah, of course, prayer, of course, connection to God is the main thing. But I like murder. I'm really into that, right? And whatever that expression comes out, or maybe they'll have multiple goals in their mind that are operating at different times or different phases in their life where they haven't really hit it. Okay, here comes another faction, maintained that a beautiful woman was mostly qualified to rule. Right? I instantly remembered when I saw this that there was an old movie I saw in my pre-Chuva days called Tommy with The Who. The Who was this rock and roll group, Roger Daltrey, right? And Pete Townsend. And anyways, they had Eric Clapton gave a thing there. I remember, not much from the movie, but they had these people like almost in a church, and they had the statue, I think, on a platform of Marilyn Monroe coming out in between, right? In the aisle, in the middle aisle, coming down, and everybody, I don't know what they were doing with them, worshiping, kissing, I don't know what. Anyways, I thought that was weird at the time, but of course, made sense to me. Of course, it makes total sense as we see right now. Another faction maintained that a beautiful woman was most qualified to rule. They held that the main goal was that the land be populated. Yeah, let's populate the land, okay, which really means sex. Okay, since it was for this reason that the world was created, since a beautiful woman aroused desire to populate the world, that she brings about the goal, and such a woman would be best qualified to rule, right? People have posters. I remember in my days, even in the yeshiva, one guy had a poster. Opened up his locker, and there was a poster of something not sneeze, not appropriate, not modest. And I came from there, man. I was born and raised in LA, man. Hashem help us. But anyways, we see that some people go after sex. They chose a beautiful woman, and she became their queen. Then they sought out a land conducive to this, California, and settled there. Another group maintained that the main goal was speech. The primary advantage that man has over the animals, this is what this group maintained, is that he was able to speak. Hey, right? They accordingly sought an orator, an orator, who was expert in language. Yes, I speak 70 languages. Who knew many languages and spoke them all the time. Such a person will be closest to the goal, right? The professor who spoke many, he speaks 70 languages. He's a god. No, king. They went and found a crazy Frenchman who was constantly talking to himself. They asked him if he knew languages, and he said he did. According to their foolish, confused opinion, he had reached the goal, right? He was a master of language, and he knew many languages. Moreover, he spoke so much. This guy doesn't know how to stop talking. He is king. Dude, I would shoot that guy if somebody who couldn't speak, couldn't stop speaking. Moreover, he spoke very much since he was constantly talking to himself. Stop that. No, I didn't say anything. Did you? No, I didn't say anything either. Right? He was very good in their opinion. They accepted him as king. They also chose for themselves a land that was conducive to their concept. And they settled there with their king, Harvard, maybe? I don't know, Cambridge. One can be sure that he led them in a straight path. Oh. Could also be music. This could be like the bard. This is what I'm thinking, like the bard who had this unbelievable quality expression of the highest form of poetry and words. So therefore that vessel shattered and of course became people who are totally attracted to speech and speaking right, or the poetry, and they go to the poetry clubs and all that kind of stuff, and they think poetry is the main goal of life, and they're totally into it. A whole society and culture around poetry. Another faction maintained that the main goal was joy. When a person is born, people are joyous. When there is a wedding, they are joyous. When they conquer a land, they are joyous. Therefore, the goal of everything is joy, happiness. They therefore sought a man who was always happy. He would be closest to the goal and best qualified to be king. They went and found a heathen wearing a filthy shirt, carrying a bottle of whiskey, right? And a number of heathens were following him. And he was slogging going on down the street. Since he was very drunk, this heathen was very, very happy. When they saw that this heathen was very happy and had no worries, he was very good. In their opinion, since he attained the goal of joy, they accepted him as their king. Now, where is that found? Maybe that's chesed. I don't know where that shattered vessel is. Let's see if we can find it here in the note quickly. Let me go back here. I'm going back. Nope, that's not it. Here he even mentions France in the footnote. That I never saw that, but in any case, I guess he knew about French. Speech is only rectified by praising the tzaddik, therefore that was the land. Here again, the goal is roots in holiness, since the joy of holiness is very great. God thus said, Israelites would be punished because you did not serve God with joy. Right? God's teachings are upright. They give joy to the heart. I will rejoice in God, but there is also a joy that is wrong. In other words, there's a joy of a mitzvah, which is the real joy, is when you're doing a mitzvah. That is the real joy. But then there's a mitzvah that is wrong, right? What point is there in joy? King Solomon says, right? And the Talmud says that this is a joy which is not associated with a good deed. Joy is associated with the king's faithful friend. There we go. Joy and love are closely associated. So it is like chesed, the sphere of chesed, which is joy. Those who love your name shall rejoice, right? So this is the faithful friend in terms of the highest form of expression, this element of love. But of course, in the fallen expression, kind of interesting how it's joy. Okay, now to go back just a little bit and then we'll finish off. Faction of joy, when they found this heathen, right? He was wearing a filthy shirt, he was drunk. They also chose a land, so they made him as their king because he's drunk and happy, because he don't care about anything in the world. Must be happy. They also chose a land that was conducive to their concept. It was a place of vineyards and the like, which they could use to make wine. Out of the seeds, they make brandy so that nothing could go to waste. Their main goal was to become drunk and thus always be happy. Interesting, huh? Always, of course, this had nothing to do with their concept of joy, since they had nothing for which to be happy. Still, they felt that they were attaining their goal by being happy, even though they had no reason. They therefore chose a land conducive to this, went and settled there. I don't know where that is. Can't think of one. Okay, where do they get drunk the most? France. Let's just all blame it on France. Everything is in France. Okay. Let's stop now because we're almost done, even though. Another faction let's just go for another minute and see if we can finish all of these. Another faction maintained that the most important thing was wisdom. They sought for themselves a very wise man and made him their king. They also sought a land which was conducive to wisdom and settled there. Another faction maintained that the main goal was to pamper oneself with food and drink. That's not like the foodies. This is kind of different. Why? Because thus they develop large muscles. Here are the bodybuilders. They therefore sought a man who had large muscles and who exercised to enlarge them. In other words, Arnold was this king. Everything is about bodybuilding, right? So, of course, we're going to find a person who wins the Mr. Universe 10 years in a row. They therefore sought a man who had large muscles and who exercised to enlargements, and such a person would have large limbs. thus having a greater portion in the world, taking up more space in the world physically because he's got large. Why don't they just get an 800-pound man? The person with the largest limbs would therefore be closest to the goal and should be king. They went and found a tall athlete, and he was good in their opinion. He was a person with large limbs, close to the goal. They accepted him as king. They also sought a land that was conducive to this and went and settled there. There was another faction who maintained that none of this was the goal of life. The main goal was to pray to God and to be humble and lowly. They sought for themselves a prayer leader and made him their king. Okay, if one examines this, one will understand that each of these factions was greatly in error, except for the last group, which was the true one, which was the main goal is to connect to Hashem. But of course, we see all of these different factions, and all of these are results, the expression that we see as a result of the shattered vessels, whether it's wisdom, joy, food, intimacy, murder, and honor. All of these were the perverted, contorted expressions, but that really they have a place in ultimate holiness. But of course, because as a result of the shattering of the vessels, we see that the world is in confusion, and some people don't really have a total grip on the goal of life. Here, one thing that you have to understand that we get through this so far up till now, that now we're going to end, is the goal. How much are you gravitating towards the true goal of life? And how much can you catch yourself maybe thinking that some of these other things might be also included in the goal? Okay. But the idea here is to have all of these elements in its holy form. Okay, we will stop now. Let me go out of the room here. Yes, just 1 second. I'm just going to end this.